Hi, hello, and how are you, everyone? Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you're doing well, and I wanted to do a quick Section 80 retrospective as the breakout Kendrick Lamar project turns 10 years old, or turned 10 years old this year. It actually dropped much earlier in the year 2011 than we are at right now, but this actually almost slipped by me. I forgot that this thing is 10 years old at this point, and I wanted to go back and listen to it and just see how generally the whole thing held up. I mean, many of you may remember I reviewed this back in the day, gave it a very positive review, and this project for many was kind of like the point of entry and initial interest for Kendrick Lamar and Top Dog Entertainment at large, though, Ab-Soul and Schoolboy Q had some well-received projects around that time. Kendrick's Section 80, though, was really the project that pulled ahead in terms of causing a lot of conversation and commotion. And with so many definitive album cycles and eras for Kendrick across the last decade, I had to go back and listen to this thing because, in a way, I almost forgot who he was and what he represented and what he seemed to sort of stand for when he, came out of the gates with this record. Before I get too deep into this commentary, I do want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, good people over at The Ridge, still making these awesome, fantastic, nifty metal-plated wallets. Hit up that link down below, promo code MELON for a percentage off your order. Cool. All right, so going back and listening to this, I think this project still more or less holds up. It's refreshing that it holds up as well as it does. The production is still super quality from front to back, and while it doesn't sound nearly as impressive as much of what Kendrick is doing today because he's advanced so much conceptually and artistically, it's interesting to go back and listen to this because while in a way Kendrick does sound like he's still at a very early stage on this record when you compare it to his later stuff. On Section 80, he arrived to us in so many ways like fully formed or at a point artistically that many artists like struggle to get to after years and years and years of work. Like there's an incredible amount of maturity to this project, despite the age that he was at when he recorded and wrote it. From the topics on these songs, the urgency with which Kendrick delivers them, his ability to tell a story across a track, his ability to flow so well, especially on tracks like Rigor Mortis. Again, this is like a level of talent that a lot of artists would be at not on their breakout project, but maybe 5 to 10 years after their breakout project. With that being said, though, in retrospect, there are ways in which Section 80 does feel a little limited in comparison to a lot of Kendrick's later works, because it becomes very clear, even after just a few tracks, that over the years, Kendrick vocally has become so much more expressive, not only in terms of like the voices he brings to a track, but the various inflections and his flows. You guys heard him going absolutely nuts on those recent Baby Keem tracks, but even when comparing a lot of his work on T-Pab to what's here, he does sound like a little flat, a little one note, a little one-dimensional, even if his rapping and his flows a great deal of the time are impressive and done well. Some of the points or observations made on these tracks lack a certain level of maturity that I think he's at right now, especially on the cuts that maybe deal in stuff that might have more to do with women, like No Makeup, for example, or a Tammy song. I mean, these tracks are by no means terrible, for sure. But, this idea of women going lesbian because they're tired of their boyfriends is a little reductive, as are, again, some of Kendrick's observations on makeup and beauty standards on No Makeup. But I think later into his career, he would make more nuanced commentaries on things like beauty standards and complexion and infidelity, cheating, relationships at large. I'll also say some of the hooks on this thing, especially that No Makeup hook, which I wasn't really crazy about when I first heard it. It feels like a very bad, overblown chorus from an Eminem song, but even the hook also from Ronald Reagan era, for example, just like that overly campy and maybe kinda jazzy delivery on the chorus. I mean, those have not not really aged the best, but again, when Section 80 dropped, those weren't even some of the most essential elements of the project anyway. The song ADHD, for example, has such a spacey and euphoric sound and vibe to it that reminds me of cuts like Shireen, for example. Rigor Mortis, to reference that track again, the wild flows, the jazz influence. I mean, I'm so glad that that wasn't something in concept that Kendrick gave up on, but dove further into on later releases. It's interesting to go back and listen to that track with, you know, songs like For Free as a parallel or a comparison. And look, while I do poke some holes in the project, there are obviously narratives from this thing like Keisha's song that have held up so well that Kendrick has, you know, kind of extended that into the Kendrick Lamar hip hop universe on you know, later tracks as well. He's definitely like still appreciative of what he was able to pull off and do in this era, even in some comments he made around Damn, being happy at least in the way he was able to loosely build the tracks on that record rather than having to, you know, put together more of a cohesive narrative in the way that he did on Good Kid, Mad City and T-Pab. And when trying to break away from that more narrative direction, what was his reference point to achieve that, to go back to what he did on Section 80 with more of, again, an array of different points and opinions and topics. I will say that still to this day, some of my favorite Kendrick tracks ever land on this record, be it Hole Up, ADHD, Po Man's Dreams, Rigor Mortis, again, especially, and absolutely love High Power, the closing track on this one, which I think is still one of the best Kendrick closing tracks, you know, even taking into account the final moments of Good Kid, Mad City and Mortal Man. I still think High Power is an incredible closing track, not only because of that stellar J. Cole production, but because of like the song's energy of kind of creating a movement, some kind of like, you know, momentum socially that will change the world as it is right now. And some of Kendrick's coldest bars on that track too. The what is the line where he shoots a pig, Charlotte's Web is gonna miss you, is a fucking killer line. Look, you can make the argument that a lot of Kendrick's commentary here, while passionate and well-intentioned, is maybe a little naive. You know, maybe he is like punching above his weight a little bit in terms of influence and, you know, making some coherent statements on social issues, but maybe he's not, as a younger person, as well-versed in these problems and these topics as maybe he, you know, could be. Now, that's experience that he would obviously, you know, gain over the next 10 years. And I think with that experience, Kendrick has slowly become, and I don't mean this in an insulting way, like maybe a bit more of a doomer. Again, I will say that the commentary on this project maybe a little naive, as, you know, is the case with most people who are young and getting into politics and trying to understand the world that they live in. You don't understand everything, and maybe your framework for stuff around you is a little shoddy, even if, you know, maybe your experience is really intense and thorough in some aspects and regards, which I'm sure, you know, for Kendrick it certainly was. But, you know, it seems like that naivete also led to an extreme level of confidence in his message on every single track, on all these songs, especially on High Power, which again, I love. He seems so sure of himself. He seems so sure of what he's saying. He seems so sure of his grasp of things. And simultaneously, he seems so sure that if given the opportunity, if given the attention, if given what he is seeking to achieve through his music, that some kind of change will manifest, something will alter, something will improve, there will be something to arise out of that. And I feel like this is kind of a confidence that over the years Kendrick has lost in his music, and understandably so, because, you know, Kendrick came to find, and this is kind of stated in his own meta commentary in his music, that, you know, you don't just get on the mic, say something cogent or poignant, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, shit just changes, and people's attitudes and lives and behaviors and the systems that they live under all improve. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. And, you know, I still think Kendrick to this day cares about these issues and cares about these topics and cares about change and cares about the state of the world. But maybe over the years, I think, you know, certainly when looking at his attitude on this project, there has been a little bit of a disillusionment. There's been a big disillusionment. And for me, that's kind of been maybe the biggest shock going back and listening to this project, because on every single track here, he just seems so sure of himself and everything that he's saying and everything that he's doing. And while there's certainly still a confidence in a lot of what he does today, there is also still, like, you know, some sidebars of commentary. You catch them on Untitled Unmastered. You catch them on TPAB, where he seems sort of like, you know, shaken in his ability to influence people and his status as, I guess, like, you know, a thought leader maybe in the hip-hop community. Now that Kendrick's achieved this status and accomplished what he set out to accomplish on this project in terms of making it as far as he has, I think in a way he's seen that it's not all that it's cracked up to be. I wonder if this kind of progressively doomer spiral will continue on to his projects to come. But yeah, Section 80, a record that I think still has a lot of good cuts, still holds up quite well. And let me know your thoughts on this record overall in the comments down below. Are you still listening to it? Are you still rocking with it to this day? How do you think it holds up in comparison with everything else Kendrick has dropped since? And what do you think about my thoughts on the whole thing? You're the best. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up, or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Kendrick Lamar, Section 80, forever.